All right, welcome into the Hoist the Colors podcast, the Bucks on the Pond edition of the podcast here. It is Sunday night, June 9th at 9 o'clock, and we are back for perhaps our season conclusion of the podcast as we did our season wrap up on, what was that, gentlemen, Tuesday? And I'm glad we did it then because Wednesday came and everybody hit the portal. Of course, not everybody, but some significant names over the next few days. We'll get into that. Stephen Igo here, Scott Lorbatcher, Jonathan Wagner alongside. So the point of this podcast, obviously, we already looked back at the season. We'll more so talk about the latest transfer news, look ahead to next season. Admittedly, guys, it is very much an unknown and in flux as far as kind of what to expect, and we'll get into all that. But I don't know. Usually we go around the horn and get everybody's thoughts on the game. I guess we'll go around the horn and get everybody's thoughts on the transfer portal and what has happened to ECU thus far. Of course, with Zach Root, Bristol Carter, Luke Nowak entering, among others, but those are the significant ones. So let's go around the horn, guys, talk about that. We'll start with Jonathan Wagner. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, Zach Root was kind of the first domino to fall. And, whether it be just the rumors that started over the season, once that happened, I wasn't really all that surprised, to be completely honest. But it's still a big blow. So it's disappointing because I think that was probably you have Ethan Norby is right now your last given in the rotation for next year. So losing Zach Root, a Friday night guy, a future first round pick, it's big. But to me, the most disappointing one is Bristol Carter, just because I do think that he has a lot of untapped potential. And right now, your only returning outfielder is Riley Johnson, who's about to have 2 shoulder surgeries. So, again, just like the rotation and just like pretty much every single position outside of maybe catcher on this team, it's completely unproven. And, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I don't feel good about this team next year as it currently stands, but this time next week, that could be completely flipped. So while it sucks and I kind of hate where things have headed with the portal and NIL and all that stuff, and we'll dive into it later. But there are reasons all these guys are gone, both sides of it. And while I miss some of them, yeah. But at the same time, this team hasn't gotten it done. So maybe to some extent, maybe some new faces, some changes aren't a bad thing, but still, I do hate to lose Bristol. I hate to lose Root. I hate to lose some of those guys. So that's just the state we're in, and this coaching staff has a lot of work to do for the next couple of weeks.
Scott, you almost died earlier today. Is your Yellow Jacket attack survivor? So give us an update there, and then let us know your thoughts on the portal as well.
Yeah, be careful walking under trees, I guess. Yellow Jackets are lurking, waiting to attack. My left ankle is sore, but I will survive. I did go to the pool after golf where I was attacked viciously by Yellow Jackets. And it's swollen, but it's not like a bump. It's a little red, but I'll be okay. But turning to the portal, yeah, it kind of stings, much like a Yellow Jacket attack, to lose guys like Zach Root and Bristol Carter. I think Bristol specifically because I think that's one that was preventable. I don't know that there was a way to keep Zach Root here next year, just based off of everything kind of we've heard and kind of the feelings around it. But I think, there's times where we are over analytical in our approach, and that's not always going to work with players. And I think if you look at AMAC going to NC State, batting 370 and hitting 20 home runs after the year he had last year, I think sometimes guys may look at that and go, you know what, if I could do this my way or the way that I'm used to and feel the most comfortable with somewhere else and, potentially make a ton of money by going there, that's not the worst thing in the world. And, I do that. I would say I do wish all the best for Bristol. I think, maybe the way that we operate here and the way that he operates best aren't going to necessarily be in lockstep. So, it's unfortunate. I was really looking forward to seeing him develop into what I think is a future Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, it definitely bothers me that Bristol, is out. I just felt like he was such a good fit for ECU from a mentality standpoint, like chip on the shoulder, aggressive and look, I mean, at times kind of reckless with his baseball style, according to those that watched him in travel ball and prep ball. But we didn't really get to see that at ECU. I think he attempted like 5 or 6 stolen bases, obviously a lot of bunting. You know, he didn't hit for a ton of power because, you know, he kind of widened out his stance and I think became more of an hit for average contact guy, which is, you know, nothing wrong with that. We see that work for a lot of guys in ECU's program. But as Scott mentioned, there's just, you know, some guys, maybe they don't feel 100% comfortable that way, and not everything was baseball specific, according to people familiar with the situation. So Bristol felt like it was best to move on, and, you know, it's very easy to move on right now. And he's already gotten calls from basically everybody in the SEC and ACC, so he's going to be playing somewhere really good next year. And I think we all wish him the best. I mean, there's no ill will between Bristol and ECU. You know, Zach Root, you know, we heard all the rumors. Still don't think the rumors were true. Now, he does have an NIL representative, and maybe that guy was, I don't want to say shopping him around, but reaching out, gauging interest. But it did always kind of feel like Root would be a guy, if there was an NIL opportunity to come along, if that was going to be the main thing, he would be the one more likely to jump than anybody. It just, after he pitched Monday, guys, I kind of expected him to be back, because it was like, all right, he's throwing twice in one regional weekend. Clearly there's something that he cares about, you know, helping ECU win. But then he was gone less than 48 hours later. So I don't know. Nowak, to me, you know, no disrespect to Luke Nowak, but I think he's very replaceable. He had a good regional, but outside of that, like, there's a lot of guys who left that could have made a leap next year or didn't have a roster spot, had a long way to go. So, like, this whole panic about the program falling apart, I don't think is real accurate. And I think a part of it is just college baseball. I think the one that bothers us all is Bristol Carter, right, Wags, as you kind of look at it. I mean, obviously Root's a talent, but I think Bristol is the one you kind of counted on coming back.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you asked me 2 weeks ago if I thought there was any chance that Bristol might be gone, it's probably not. But, you know, you look at the stretch run and he didn't play a whole lot. And, you know, you kind of, I don't want to say you saw it coming, but just like I said earlier, just in today's world of college athletics, I mean, it's just where we are. If you don't play, you're not happy for whatever reason. And it might be off the field, it might be whatever, who knows. But none of us really know the full story. Nobody knows the full story except for Bristol Carter. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wish him the best. I'm a big Bristol Carter fan. I think he's going to do really well wherever he ends up if he can play his game. And I think that's playing center field and just kind of being able to hit and be a hitter, be aggressive. And I don't know if we're going to get into this whole thing here, but I do think it, you know, you look at AMAC last year, him leaving and then him blowing up at NC State, blowing up in a good way. And I think Bristol's going to do the same. I think a lot of hitters who transfer out in the future when that happens are going to do the same. Connor Rasmussen, just because of style of play. I think it's hard on hitters. You know, for me as a baseball player, and there's a reason I stopped playing in high school as a sophomore too, so keep that in mind. But when I went to the plate, I needed to be razor focused. I knew what I was doing going into it. If I'm in a box and overthinking what call is going to come in from the third base coach and not just going into every at-bat, but going into every pitch of every at-bat, I think it messes with you. And I've said that before, and I think it's a problem. I think it limits the hitter's upside. I think it takes them away from from playing their game. So I think that plays into it as well. But yeah, I think Bristol's going to be really good next year wherever he does go, and I'll be following him because I do think I'm a big fan of the player, no doubt.
All right, we'll come back to this conversation, I'm sure. I just got to, no offense, Scouts Focus, but we got to discuss this comment. Evansville is the better program. ECU has to get older and more skilled to succeed in the NILH. Calling Evansville the better program, I think, is a joke. What is this, their first regional since 2006?
Yeah, first regional in 18 years.
I mean, like, obviously, look, congrats to Evansville. They're playing on ECU. They beat ECU. I still would take, if that series was played 10 times, I would take ECU to win it 7 out of 10 times, maybe more. They're hot. They are extremely old, and they're playing well. What are they losing, 12-1 right now?
It was 12-1 last time I looked.
And, I mean, everything kind of came together for them. ECU is extremely old this year, too. They just got beat by Evansville. I mean, most years every year I'm taking ECU over Evansville. So, I don't know. That's kind of a asinine comment, I think.
If they didn't win their conference tournament, they wouldn't have even made the NCAA tournament.
That is a fair point. So yeah, I don't know what he's getting at there. All right, we get a lot of questions on any idea what our baseball NIL is like. I think we do a great job with our high school recruiting, but what will the transfer portal look like? So, my take on this, guys, is look, I personally think ECU should reassess kind of what it's doing as far as not offering guys in the portal. It seems like that's not going to change for now. They're still going to recruit the portal a lot, but I don't know. I don't think there's a ton in NIL right now, and you're not going to go get an impact bat or an ace pitcher, but I still think you've got to entertain the portal. I think they are entertaining the portal. Sorry, I'm about to cough right into the mic. But no, it's I don't know. With the roster being what it is, guys, you're gonna have to hit the portal. But I think people like expecting them to go land some game changer. It's just not reality, probably. But that doesn't mean you can't get a bunch of guys who can contribute and help your roster. So I don't know. What do y'all think about the portal approach? What should the portal approach be going into this offseason, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's clearly a hierarchy in the portal, whether it's baseball or any other sport. And I think we've done kind of a poor job as an athletics department outside of maybe women's basketball in the portal. But you look at Campbell, and they get Grant Knipp out of the portal, who's a backup catcher at Alabama. He goes there, and he's throwing 95, coming in as a relief pitcher, hitting, was leading the country and home runs at one point before he got hurt. And that's a guy that I think that we could go out and get. You're not going to go get a guy like Tommy Lepore that pitched well against us from Wichita State, and the guys that are like a little more proven against higher competition. But I think you can go out and get guys that can contribute here, but you have to be willing to do it, and you have to be willing to go and say you're going to come and you're going to have an opportunity to start on Saturdays or on Fridays or whatever it might be, or you're going to come and you're going to be a pivotal part of this lineup. And some guys want to hear that. They don't want to hear, oh, you'll just have to fill in behind whoever we have now and take their spot. So, and then as far as NIL goes, we have some, we don't have a ton, but I mean, you have to use it where it's needed. And if it's needed in the portal more than it's needed to keep your seniors happy, then that's the way you have to use it. And obviously, like the seniors that have been here and put the work in, they deserve that. And I think maybe as fans, and if I'm a local business, I'm looking at that and I see how many people came to Greenville over that regional weekend, and maybe I need to contribute more to Club 23 to get Cliff more to play with as far as NIL money, so he can distribute it, both in the portal and to some of the older guys. But it's something that we need to use more effectively as an entire athletic department, in my opinion.
I also think and again, I don't expect this to happen because Cliff Godwin, he's got his culture. He believes in it. ECU's won 44 straight games, 44 games in 6 straight seasons. I mean, the success speaks for itself. Times are changing though, and you wonder, will that ever needed to be changed as far as his portal approach? I think it's a valid conversation. Right now, I don't expect it to change. And, we'll continue to see how this offseason plays out. But I do think, let's say if Cliff Godwin went to did his interviews and said, hey, look, we need to go out and we need to land a right-handed bat and we need $50,000, $100,000 to do it. I think a lot of people would give to the 23 club or Club 23, I don't know the official term, the NIL collective for EC baseball, because they know it would directly impact. Like, Mike Houston last year was like, hey, we need $200,000 to go get a quarterback. And people gave to that as a result. So, like, you kind of have to work on your messaging there if that's ECU's approach. But I don't think that's the approach right now. But I still think if you do give to the collective, it will benefit ECU baseball because it definitely helps the retaining players right now. Wags, your thoughts on the portal and approach for ECU right now in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line to walk too, because I mean, like you look at the post-game press conference after ECU lost, and every year it's so emotional because it's always filled with the seniors, the guys who have given everything to this program. So like I get it. I get it from Cliff's standpoint, wanting to reward those guys. And because they've earned it, here. I think that's important too, because the culture is important. And that's how you build a place as special that this place is. But the landscape's changing. And I'm not saying you can't continue to do that. It's just I think you have to allocate your resources a little better. And I mean that's just how it is now. If you don't adjust to the way everyone else is doing it, you will get beat and you will get passed over. And ECU's, one of the best programs in college baseball for a long time now. But I mean, let's just call it how it is. Everyone in the SEC, ACC, they're all going to pay their players. They're going to buy their teams. That's just how it works now. And love it, hate it, I don't care. That's just how it is. And, for ECU, a team that's looking to compete not only with them, but just, the other mid-majors, if you will, in the American, that kind of stuff. I mean, Mitch Hanna's just got hired by USF. That's a great hire. I mean, this conference isn't going to stay so crappy, I hope at least. So other teams are going to get better, you would think. So again, if you don't, I think at least explore changing how you do things, then I do think it's possible you get passed up. And with how things are going, if you do get passed up, it might be ugly. So yeah, I think you've got to get aggressive. You've got to improve the roster. And I know it's heading towards a professionalization, it's pro sports and pretty much it's free agency. And I hate it personally, but that's how it is, and you have to adjust. And if you don't, you will lose.
Yeah, ECU is in a weird spot where, I mean, look, even if ECU went all in on NIL in the portal, they wouldn't be able to compete. So, like, you've got to maintain your culture and you have to develop players, but you also have to find the balance, I think. And I think this coaching staff is the one to do it, but it is a tough situation. All right, before we look at the recruiting coming in for next year, which we will touch on, let's look at the returning roster. And I know, Wags, you have your spreadsheet going, and a lot of question marks for next year's roster. What are the numbers looking like right now as you kind of dive into your spreadsheet for next year's roster count?
Questionable, very questionable. I think on the roster I have, assuming I'm not missing anybody, which is possible, I'm human, but I have a count of 42 players, and I think the limit's 40. But that 42 includes Wyatt Lunsford-Shankman, it includes Parker Bird, it includes Charlie Hodges. So there's still a little bit of room to maneuver. But Jake Hunter as well, who knows what's going to happen with him next year. But yeah, in terms of strictly returning talent, I mean, pretty much there's not a lot. And pitching-wise, you have Ethan Norby, and that's it, rotation. I mean, the rest of it is going to have to be newcomers. In bullpen, it's Colby Wallace, Jackson DiLorenzo, and Jaden Winter, pretty much. Maybe Eric Ritchie. So it's a huge question mark pitching-wise. Position player-wise, you have Ryan McChrystal and Walker Barron, potentially. McChrystal is a draft risk, I believe. And then it's kind of you have Dixon Williams, you have Riley Johnson, and then you have a whole bunch of holes. So I don't know. I mean, you have a guy like Colby Wallace who's a little versatile. He can play a little bit corner infield, and I want to see them move Colby Wallace to first base this offseason, because then I think if you move him to first base, he got some work this offseason, this past offseason at first. You can continue to focus him on pitching, and then obviously he can still play third base as well. So, and yeah, I mean, it's just like Dixon Williams can play second or third, and then it's just a matter of you have a giant freshman class coming. You have 5 JUCO guys coming in. So you got to piece together the holes. And I hope those holes aren't filled by freshmen. I hope those holes are filled by, some portal additions. I think they have to be, or the lineup's not going to be great. The rotation's not going to be great. And the bullpen is not going to be great, I don't think. So, and obviously guys can step up. I'm not saying just because guys, were on the team this year and didn't perform either well or play a lot, doesn't mean they can't take a step. But when you need so many guys at so many different positions to take a step, it's a huge risk. So I'd like to see some proven talent added. But yeah, there's a lot of questions. I think that's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, if history tells us anything, it's that at least 2 or 3 of these guys returning who didn't play at all this year will end up being key players for ECU in the future. Just because you look at the whole senior class this year, basically all those guys didn't play at all or played hardly their freshman year. So we'll see. Adam McMahon says the Wags is nothing but rainbows and kittens tonight. I mean, there's a ton of uncertainty. I think this is the toughest offseason or the most challenging offseason for this coaching staff in quite some time. I don't know, Scott, when you look at the roster, those names Wags mentioned, like, who do you feel really good about going into next year? Any position or guys that you know ECU's going to be counting on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Colby Wallace and Dixon Williams are going to be the centerpiece to your lineup. And then, who knows how long it'll take Riley Johnson to get back healthy, but that's a guy that I think by the end of the year will be a very integral part of our lineup, probably leading off or hitting second again. But outside of that, it's hard to be super confident in anybody. Ryan McChrystal too. I think Ryan McChrystal, if he returns, is set to have kind of a big year next year. But I think there's a lot of holes, and in the past, we've had a hole at third base and got a Connor Litton. We've needed a catcher and went out and got a Ben Newton type guy, and we need a lot of that this year. And it's not just defensively or offensively. It's in the bullpen. It's pitching. So I think you'll see either this staff and this program kind of shift its focus in a way that they haven't done before, or we're going to have a setback next year, and it's going to be kind of a cold water in the face moment where if we don't change what we're doing and start looking at the portal and changing the philosophy a little bit, then we're going to be that scary 2 seed instead of the host team that we've kind of come to know.
If it were me, you mentioned Wallace at first, which I don't hate, Wags, because especially if he's going to pitch. I mean, that would save his arm. But I guess it depends on what his status is as a pitcher, because I like Wallace at third and Dixon at second more, just based on how it looked this year. And I think Wallace, his power is going to end up playing more as he kind of refines his swing. But, I mean, that could play at first base too. We don't know who's going to be coming in at who can play first too, or who's going to play short. Nick Parham's a guy that I've heard good things about at shortstop. Someone asked about Nathan Chrisman. I don't know what exactly to expect from him if he returns. I think Parham's got the better upside as a shortstop. They're also bringing in, a talented JUCO infielder who probably profiles more as a second baseman. So you just have a lot of uncertainty on where the pieces fit, which is what the fall is for. And for those who are unfamiliar, Wags was mentioning those numbers. You can have over 40 going into fall, and basically, the reality is for most top programs in America, it's kind of tryouts for those last few spots, and then you kind of whittle down your roster going into the spring. So it can, the fall is going to tell us a lot. ECU historically scrimmages Clemson in Virginia every fall. I would assume that would continue. So we'll know a lot more then. Bruce Willis asked if Ryan McChrystal returns, would he DH again mainly or catch? I think if McChrystal's back, which is a big question mark, because I think if his numbers match, he's definitely going, and I don't think he's got a huge number. I think he would be your primary catcher to begin with, but I do like Walker Barron, and I think they'll add another catcher. They got some incoming guys. I wouldn't be shocked if they get a portal guy, especially if they feel like McChrystal's going. Jacob says Wallace and Dixon being versatile and where it can move allows them to widen the net in the portal and helps a lot. I do think that is key, Wags. You can kind of move those guys around. And my main question mark is the outfield. Who the hell is playing right and left field at this point? And I do know that they're looking at some portal outfielders, so that could be addressed shortly. But that to me is the biggest question mark.
Yeah, no doubt. I love having Dixon. He can play second or third. Colby, he can play first or third, and that's huge. But yeah, I think you look at a guy like Riley Johnson's the only returning outfielder right now, outside of Jason Janesco, who barely played, and then after that, it's all freshmen right now. And I think, Davin Whitaker was a guy who was on the team last year, but he didn't play. He's off to a hot start in his summer league. I can't remember off the top of my head where he's playing, but he can play first base too. So at least on the roster, he can. So that's a guy, if he can develop into a bat, he's a lefty bat, but I do think he profiles as a power type guy, maybe a double digit homer. So, if he develops and he has a good off season and he goes into the season hot, then he's a guy who could play corner outfield. He could play first base potentially, and it just gives you more options because you have some infielders like your Austin Irbies, and then you have a whole bunch of freshman shortstops that could play anywhere over the infield that are coming in. So yeah, I think you have options, but yeah, outfield's the big one because again, you have Riley Johnson, and like Scott said, I mean, double shoulder surgery. Who knows what he's going to be and how long it's going to take him to get there. If Riley Johnson's fully healthy, I'm 100% confident because he's your center fielder. You know exactly what you're getting from him. But yeah, you got it's a fair question to just wonder how it's going to affect him going into next season. But yeah, I do think Davin Whitaker, he's a guy I have my eye on. I'm going to watch him a lot as much as I can during the summer ball and during the fall because I do think he's a guy that could step up. But yeah, I think you have to add at least one, ideally two or three outfielders if you can through the portal.
No doubt. Meredith Whitehead with a good point here. We talked about this a lot on the show. I don't know the exact stats, but I think almost every team in the tournament has a minimum of 1 to 2 guys with 20-plus home runs. We had no one with 20 home runs. I mean, this has been a very offensive year, guys. I don't know. I mean, is ECU, are they not recruiting enough power? I mean, this should be a ballpark that plays to power, or is it just the mentality standpoint from an offense? What do you think, Scott, as far as ECU's offense and not having enough big boppers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mentality, and I think we coach it, and we don't, play for the long ball. I think you saw guys like JC and Bristol, their stance widen for them to put the ball in play more, to hit more kind of gap to gap as opposed to out of the park, and that's kind of just the way we play because we play better with traffic. So, you know, I think sometimes home runs are rally killers for us more than anything because we don't have guys on base to have motion and things like that. So um, that and having a full left-handed lineup allows teams to kind of match up against us sometimes. And you know, I think our ballpark park plays shorter to right field than it does to left field. But um, not having any right-handed bats, I think, killed us against Evansville. Um, they basically just made us, look for one pitch, and we couldn't do a whole lot with it. So and obviously the bunting thing, you kind of take yourself out of counts with the show bunts early, get to 1-1, 1-2 sometimes before you've even really took like a full swing, and at that point, guys are putting the ball in play more often. If you look at the numbers this year, we didn't strike out a ton, but we also didn't walk a ton, and I think it's because we had a lot of guys that had really good contact and they would put the ball in play. But unfortunately, you saw a lot of balls that were put in play and not put in play very hard. And I think sometimes allowing guys, think about Joey Barini, who jumped on the first pitch a ton, at certain points of the year and was able to hit home runs that way. If we did that more often, I think you see more home runs. You'd also see more first pitch flyouts to center field or, first pitch swings and misses. And that's not always what we want either.
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't watched a ton of NC State baseball this year, but I would imagine AMAC, a lot of his damaged pitches have come on first pitch, second pitch, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, when maybe like EC would like him to take when he was here, and he's doing damage at state because he's pretty much up there free swinging, which, like Scott said, can be good and bad. All right. We kind of addressed this earlier, but Jonathan says, are there any guys on the roster that are coming back that didn't play this season that any of you guys see making an impact next year? Irby, Parham, Whitaker, Janesco. Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo what I said earlier about Parham. I think he's got to continue to grow offensively, but he can pick it defensively. We'll see what the shortstop competition is next year. A ton of guys coming in. We'll talk about the incoming class here in a minute. There was a freshman pitcher, JD Little, who didn't really throw it all this year. Who's a lefty, who could be a guy who helps in time. So I don't know. What do y'all think as far as that? And then just in general, like guys returning that played, I think will make a big leap, like DiLorenzo and some of those guys. Wags, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Davin Whitaker earlier, and he's a guy that I think if in the right situation, if he has a good summer and preseason, he can develop into a starting caliber and a pretty high level starting caliber corner outfielder, potentially first base. But I mean, I'm going to look at a guy, and I don't know if this falls under this umbrella, but I look at Walker Barron, and with or without Ryan McChrystal, I mean, Walker Barron's going to play a lot next year. I think you move probably closer to an even split on a 4 game week. It's 2-2 instead of 3-1, like you had this year with Wilcox and McChrystal. But I think Barron's good defensively. He's a right-handed bat, and I think his bat has a lot of potential too if he can get consistent ABs. So that could turn into a situation where if one of them's catching, I think you're going to see the other DHing a lot, at least based on the current makeup of this roster. So, and he's a right-handed bat, and like Scott just said, not having right-handed bats kind of hurt us at times, and I think adding that will be good. So, yeah, I think Walker Barron's the first guy that comes to mind, but I do think he's gonna, if he gets the chance. I'll start with that. If he gets the chance, I think Walker Barron will be a special player at ECU.
Wags calling a shot now. By the way, we have 700 plus viewers, so I guess people are still interested in ECU baseball in the future. We should mention bots, AI, Elon Musk, Robo Umps,
please.
Yellow Jackets. Richard Osbrook says, anyone playing in the Cape this summer? Sorry, I joined late. Yeah, Zach Root and Bristol Carter.
Tough.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how much Root pitches. I did hear Root. I heard a lot of Florida State buzz early, some A&M, and then I heard Vandy has made a big push. So who knows? You hear all sorts of stuff this time of year. We'll see where Zach Root lands. And I'll be honest, guys, Zach Root, very talented pitcher. Loved watching him pitch when he was on, but it wouldn't shock me. And I know he's got the first-round upside if Ethan Norby puts up just as good of stats outside of maybe strikeouts next year as Zach Root. So he'll get paid, and good for him. I don't blame him at all, but we'll see how it plays out. All right. Let's see. There was something I was gonna. Oh yeah, I wanted to hit this one earlier. JPN dropped since he dropped it before the show. He said one thought that I've been pondering all week with the changes in IL. Do people think that that Mackenzie Gore, Mike Trout type players might make it to colleges more often now rather than go out of high school? I'm still going to say those type of guys, no. Maybe the borderline guys, yes. I don't know, Scott. What do you think? And I don't think it's going to happen a lot at ECU because ECU doesn't have much of a NIL presence right now in baseball.
Yeah, I would say those two specifically are in a caliber that will never make it to college. But then, like, you think about like a Logan O'Hoppe, I think that's a potential guy that maybe ends up at ECU if things are different. Was that 5 or 6 years ago now? And if he's on that team in 21, I think that team goes to Omaha. So, who knows? But it's hard to say. I think certainly in the SEC, you will see some guys that are borderline, 11th, 12th round pick types that may be looking at 75,000 from a major league team or 150,000 at LSU, and then I would say it's almost an easy decision. So I do think it'll happen some. I don't know how much it'll benefit us. I just don't think that the type of players that are certainly not at the Gore Trout level, but maybe 2 or 3 tiers below that, then it's something that Club 23 has to be there to provide them with. So I don't know if Cliff is willing to do that or not. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the first round guys are getting signing bonuses of $3, $4, $5, $6 million. So I mean, nobody's going to pay that much to a college baseball player. Definitely not ECU. So now, like Scott said, the Logan O'Hoppes, kind of the mid-tier guys from a signing bonus perspective, maybe down the road I could see. And it already is happening at the SEC, ACC level. All right, Moronic Mondays. He says, do y'all think Zach Root gave his all for ECU in his final game, or do you think he didn't really care since he already knew he was leaving? I think Zach Root, if he didn't care at all, he would not have been out there Monday pitching, Wags. And I thought he actually cut it loose Monday. Like, I thought he looked tentative Friday. I thought Monday he looked more like himself. I don't know. Do y'all have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think Root looked better on Monday than he did on Friday. And Yeah, I mean, if he knew he was leaving, like you said, he's not going to be on the mound, especially after missing so much time, throwing 75 pitches on Friday and then 60 plus on Monday. I mean, I was blowing you guys up on Monday saying I hate it so much how Root's still out here, just because like at the time I thought he was coming back, and I'm like I don't want to, and not that I want to damage his arm anyways, but I didn't want him to damage his arm just because you just miss so much time and then you throw 140 pitches in a weekend. I didn't think that was very safe, but at the same time, you kind of had to. So, but yeah, I think if he knew he was leaving, I don't think he's pitching on Friday. I don't think he's pitching in the conference tournament. So if he's leaving, I don't think we see him ever since he went down initially. I think that would have been the last time we saw him pitch here.
Yeah, I mean, Anderson's kind of hitting that he gave up a home run on purpose. Like, I mean, come on now. I don't think like he was cutting it loose. Like he was throwing like 93 and looked like he was trying to get out. So, I mean, I don't think he's out there blowing the game, Scott. I think just I just think this is college sports now, man. I don't think he's out there losing on purpose. Like I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Wax said, he just wouldn't go out there. I mean, there's no reason to go out there. Also, if you go give up a bunch of home runs to Evansville, is that going to get you more or less NIL money, right? I mean, it's like
that's very true.
Also, if we win that game, he goes to Tennessee and shuts down a Tennessee lineup. I think that probably nets you a significantly higher amount of NIL money than if you, give up one of the hardest hit balls I think I've seen in a while to Kip F, whatever his name was.
Kip Futures.
Futures.
That dude is legit, man.
It's a home run every game.
What's our score on anybody got an Evansville, Tennessee score update?
It is 12-1 still. It's top of the seventh.
12-1. Christian Moore has not hit any more home runs yet.
Great for us. Tennessee minus 5.5 bettors.
12-1. So Tennessee looking like another SEC team to Omaha. Alan Thomas says it's a challenging time. All of these guys have NIL agents constantly feed them info and alternatives. Cliff's approach traditionally has been to overstock his roster and see who develops first. Can't do that anymore with guys' ability to leave freely at any time they like. The other challenge to date, we have been slow to change to grasp the realities of NIL and take advantage of the system as it is for what we need. The good news is we are a highly respected program, which will allow. And then the comments cut off because I think it's too long. But good thoughts for sure, Alan. And I mean, look, it's a difficult time for schools like East Carolina, and I think it'll take even more time to kind of realize what is the exact right approach in all sports, including baseball. All right. Skull says, what is Cliff's actual issue with the portal? Anyone know? I mean, I think it's just a culture thing. Like, you don't want guys coming in that are getting paid more than guys who have been in the program establishing the culture. And I don't know. Is it kind of that simple? I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but like that's kind of the root of the issue, right?
Yeah, I think it's that simple. And I do think Cliff takes pride in developing players. And, I love that. And I love seeing a guy who didn't play a lot. You look at the Connor Norbies, who was barely on the team his freshman year, and he wasn't really there mentally. And then you see how that worked out. And you see those types of guys. So, I get it from that standpoint. But again, I went on the whole rant earlier. The landscape's changing, and I think you got to start embracing the portal. And I don't think it's that Cliff, is completely anti-portal. I think it's taken him a little bit longer to adjust. And, that's how it is. It's tricky right now. But I think we'll start seeing it more and more. I hope we do, especially this offseason. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily anti-portal. I think it's more just pro-culture. And think what you want, but I think it is what it is.
Skull says wins are greater than culture. I mean, it's not like ECU is not winning games. I mean, they have won 44 or more games 6 consecutive seasons. They have hosted 5 out of 6 seasons. Like, I mean, for me, I understand the concern, but it's like until ECU starts losing more baseball games than they win or has a major drop-off, like I'm going to trust in Cliff Godwin, and I know that there's some antics he does from a bunting and portal perspective that drive people crazy. But look, I'm just gonna we'll see how it plays out. I'll say that much. JP, yeah, I mean, it's not like ECU hasn't used the portal either. They had a visit this weekend. They're having a visit in the coming days, so they're having another visit after that. So they're gonna try. It's just they're not offering money to guys in the portal, and they don't really have a lot of money to offer right now. All right. Any other thoughts there, Scott?
No, I mean, I think, as far as the Growler and Kaler thing, I think that's fine. But then I think we were hesitant to use them. So I think it is a matter of trust in a lot of ways for Cliff. Is I'm bringing in this guy who, maybe in his mind, walked out on their team, or however he views the portal, and I think he has a hard time getting his own beliefs in those guys to kind of align with maybe their abilities. Because I think Roller, really showed his ability late, and I think had we seen him a lot earlier, we maybe win some of those early season one run losses. So, you know, personally, I think there's players out there that do things the right way, that are just looking for a better situation, that enter the transfer portal. It's not always, oh, I don't like my coach because I wasn't playing enough. I'm looking for something. It's there's a lot of reasons to hit the transfer portal. Sometimes you just don't like the school you're at. So it's something I hope we use a lot more. But I think Cliff's hesitancy is something that is going to be hard to overcome.
All right, let's dive into the incoming class. We'll start with the junior college players. These guys have been committed for a while. I think since the fall, most of them. One of them did join this spring, and then we'll get into some of the freshmen. Then, of course, there'll be portal guys who also join as those commitments are starting to happen. All right. So again, we may be missing somebody. This is what we have gathered. So you have an infielder from St. John's River State College, which is a very good program out of Florida. Usually produces a lot of talent. Roger Vergara, 6 foot, left-handed hitting infielder, plays second base for St. John's River State College. Batted .356 this year, 5 homers, 45 RBIs, 25 walks to 17 strikeouts. So another guy who puts the ball in play. Left-handed hitter. If it's a good left-handed hitter, guys, we are adding them. I can guarantee you that. No righties allowed. All right, pitching-wise, you got 4 JUCO commits. And I think, I like this approach. Look, history tells us you're not going to hit on every junior college pitcher, just like you're not going to hit on every portal guy. All right, Michael Carpenter, left-hander out of Madison College, dominated the D2 JUCO ranks. Left-hander, 89 and 92, topped out at 94, breaking ball, changeup, 10-2, 1.03 ERA, 111 strikeouts, 11 walks in 78 innings. Led Division II JUCO in ERA. There is some draft risk there. We'll see how that plays out. Another lefty out of Brunswick Community College, Davis Kirkpatrick, is his pitching coach. Dawson Neal, 89 to 92, change curve, 5-3 this past season, 40 innings pitched, 48 strikeouts to 27 walks, 4.95 ERA, dealt with a little bit of an injury. Recent commit, right-hander Ethan Young, 6'3", 215, topped out at 98, 93 to 96. Slider curve, more of a reliever type, 1-0, 7 saves, 35 innings, 49 strikeouts, 10 walks, 2.52 ERA. And then right-handed pitcher Trevor Jackson out of John A. Logan College, 92 to 94, right-hander, swing and miss slider. This past season, he was more of a reliever. He was like a part-time starter in 23 with better numbers. This past season went to being a starter. Strikeout numbers were still good, 6 ERA, and I heard he too dealt with some health issues. So it sounds like a pretty good crop of guys out of the JUCO ranks, and we'll just kind of go around the horn. What do y'all think about this class as it looks on paper, Wax?
Yeah, I think Michael Carpenter's kind of the guy, and obviously, like you said, there is draft risk there. But if he does get here, and again, it depends on how he does once he does get here. That's a big factor too. But I mean, I talked earlier about how Ethan Norby's your only starter right now, and that's your number 2. That might be your Friday night guy right now. So, I mean, yeah, obviously you hope he gets there, and then I think Ethan Young's whether he starts or whether he turns into a back end bullpen type guy, just that velocity alone, I think that's exciting. And I love those types of guys. And the other two guys have potential too. So yeah, you need, and those guys are a little more experienced than freshmen. Yeah, it's JUCO, and it's not quite the same, but it's still pretty competitive baseball, and it's above high school, obviously. So I really hope Carpenter gets here because right now I have him penciled in for Friday nights. That's not including any like potential portal, but I think you need him. You need him to get here, and you need him to pitch at a high level. And the other three pitchers, I think, have a lot of potential too. And Vergara, I think that might be your second baseman. And again, if you play second base, and maybe you put Dixon Williams back at third, Colby at first, and or maybe he plays shortstop when he gets here. Who knows? So if three of those guys turn out, I'd be happy.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm fine if they're going to take guys as transfers. I'd rather do this than take like, guys like, no offense, but Chaz Myers and some of the other guys who like have struggled at Division One. Scott, what do you think of this list as I read off those stats? Anything jump out?
Yeah, I think you look at the strikeout to walk ratios and just the walk to innings pitched ratios, and you see that these guys, at least currently, throw the ball over the plate and they don't walk guys. And who knows what happens with the umpiring that we have in uh, ECU baseball. It seems like it's inconsistent as all get out. But one thing that I think we really struggled with was putting free guys on base. So hopefully next year these guys will get a lot of opportunities early. That's something that I hope to see out of the staff in those first 3 to 4 weeks is let's get everybody in. Let's get everybody an opportunity to show what they have. Because you don't have a Danny Beal, you don't have a Shinkman, and you don't have these guys that you've relied on for 3 or 4 years coming out of that bullpen anymore, unless Danny Bill finds a magic year of eligibility. So, obviously the Carpenter kid and young kid, they have really good numbers and good stuff. And I think 94 is 94. Some guys have 94 with a little more run. 98 is something I don't remember the last time we had a guy, maybe Seth Simmons, that threw. Well, Gavin did too, but I mean, we haven't had a lot of guys that threw over 96, 97, and at least not one for a little while. So that'll be exciting to see because there's nothing like a 98-mile-an-hour fastball to punch somebody out. And, especially at the end of a game or end of a big inning. So that's something I'd be really excited to see next year. And did see that the infielder is a left-handed bat, so that's the least surprising thing of all time.
Yeah, somebody asked for the breakdown of left-handed hitters versus righty. I'll do that for the incoming class in a second.
How many left-handed hitting second basemen do you think there are in the entire world that aren't switch hitters, like just full left-handed?
I tell you what, if you're a left-handed hitting second baseman or a catcher, or apparently a third baseman like Dixon Williams, you're going to make your way to ECU. All right. I had something I was going to say. Now I forgot what it was going to be. Oh, yeah, Shinkman. So I don't think ECU is counting on him coming back, guys, like they're hoping. But, when you go into this time of year, like you can't really bank on anybody on the draft bubble. But I do think if he comes back, he's going to be given the opportunity to start next year. I think if he does return, that's a pretty big deal. And I think he would make a great starter. So, like, if you get him back, Wags, how much of a difference would that potentially make in your projected rotation for next year?
Let me unmute myself. But yeah, I think it'd be huge because I think that's your Friday night starter. And obviously what he did this season out of the bullpen, I mean, All-American. Again, I've said it before, but when he was healthy, I think he may have been the best reliever in college baseball this season. So, yeah, I agree. I think he'd be a really good starter. He's got the stuff. He's got the pitches. And if he can just, and typically when you're going from bullpen to rotation with those kinds of guys, it's a concern with, how do they hold up throwing more innings? But that's not really a concern because we used them so much already. So I think it's kind of a seamless transition, and it's just the mentality at that point. So it'd be huge because then I think you go from, one guaranteed starter in Ethan Norby to having Shank as your Friday night ace pretty confidently, and then filling out your Saturday or Sunday is a lot easier than trying to fill it out your Friday and Saturday. So that'd be huge. I'm crossing my fingers. If I had one wish for this offseason in terms of like the returning and the draft, it would be for Shinkman to return. But at the same time, like you said, there's no guarantee. He's a pitcher that had a lot of success, who has pretty good velocity and really good stuff. So if I'm some of these MLB teams, I'm taking a lot of these guys who have spent their times as relievers and had so much success, because I think that's a valuable type of guy. But I do think us coming back and having the chance to start for a full season could take him to a whole nother level, and it'd be huge for this team because, like I said, I think that's your Friday night ace, and you're not dropping off a whole lot because I think he's really good.
Chuck wants our predictions for next year in terms of wins and how far we'll go. We'll do that at the end of the show. We'll do a way too early prediction. Anderson says Shink is a question mark for the draft. He should come back. It would be best for him too. Well, I mean, if you come back, you lose all the leverage. So if you're trying to get paid, you have to go. I mean, that's how it works. And you can't really improve your stock as a senior in terms of getting paid unless you just have a ridiculous year because you have no leverage. So that's kind of how the draft works. It's just how the scouts view them at this point, given some of the concerns or whatever coming down the stretch. All right, incoming class. Somebody asked, anybody stand out? Look, I mean, freshmen, let's be real, are always a crapshoot. If you go by perfect game rankings, some of the higher rated guys are Austin Irby, whose brother Michael Irby was on the team this past year, redshirted as a freshman. He's a corner infielder, left-handed bat, of course. But really good swing, good power, 6 foot of 190, could project into a middle of the order type bat. Ian White, 6'2", 190, right-handed pitcher, really good breaking ball. It wouldn't shock me if he comes in and is an immediate impact guy if he can throw strikes, which I think he will. Right-handed pitcher. Then you kind of after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, you got a few guys who are listed as catchers. Michael Kellenich, I think is how you pronounce that, of Florida. Holden Cooper, 2 guys who are known for their bats, can hit. Cooper is a catcher but can play all over. Braden Burris out of Green Central, shortstop, is a really talented player, good contact skills, can pick it. Nick Slogic is kind of the interesting one, guys, because he's a football commit. Do we think he ever plays baseball? Does he ever hit a home run at Clark LeClaire Stadium? 6'4", 230. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Bold prediction? Yes.
Right-handed bat, Scott.
He will hit one at Tulane. He will not hit one in real.
Just to spite Corey Glore.
Mm-hmm. He will hit it off of the press box, and then he'll hit the next pitch, and it'll say that one's for Corey.
That one's for Corey. You got a ton of infielders coming in this class. You guys can go to Perfect Game, see the whole list. Riley Williams out of Conley is a commit, local kid. Gavin Ray's an interesting one, 6'5" righty who's been up to 94, 95. We'll see, what his ability is. So I think it's a good class. I don't think it's like the best class Cliff has ever had, but I don't know, guys. Anything stand out here? Do y'all want me to run down the righty-lefty hitting? And then y'all can give your comments.
Let's be real. We know what they are.
We know what they are.
All right. Austin Irby, infielder, bats left. Michael Kellenich, bats left as a catcher, of course, typical. Braden Burris, shortstop, bats right-handed. Holden Cooper, catcher utility, bats right-handed. Dawson Kerr is kind of a two-way guy. I think he'll probably pitch, but he's a shortstop. He's listed as that. He bats right-handed. David Lillis, outfielder, bats left. Alex Pelter, outfielder, bats right. Nick Slogic, bats right. Braxton Trammell's a switch hitter, infielder. Riley Williams, outfielder from Conley, bats left. So I think what? About
now, is he an actual switch hitter, or is he a fake Joey Barini switch hitter?
Fake Joey Barini switch hitter. Once he gets to ECU, he'll give up the right side for sure. I don't know. Any thoughts on this incoming class, guys, or is it just kind of a wait and see, especially with this program?
Yeah, I do think it's a wait and see, especially with the position players. But I do think Gavin Ray is a guy who could turn into a good piece, and I haven't seen him pitch enough to give a comparable, but just with his kind of velocity, I do think you're always going to have a lot of potential there. He's a guy who probably, maybe year one, maybe year two, he's more of a bullpen guy maybe a midweek guy who gives you some length, or maybe he comes in late late games. I don't know. We have to see him when he gets here, but I do think Gavin Ray with how he projects, I do think it's a potential frontline starter type of guy if he develops. Again, it's a big if, but it is a crapshoot. But Nick Slojic, I would love it if he came here, but if he came here and actually made it to the field in baseball, but we'll see.
All right, I just got a text from Corey Glore. Decided to give my old pal I go watch tonight. Wouldn't you know it? I get an unexpected shout out.
Love you, Corey.
Nick Slojic, Corey, coming to a stadium near you. He's going to hit a bomb. I don't. Do we? Yep. Leighton says you're trying to tell me our number one tight end could sack bunt in a big game wouldn't be electric. That would be epic as hell. What do you think,
if
Scott?
He breaks his finger on a sack bunt, do you think Mike Houston lays into Cliff Godwin? And who wins that argument?
I would love to see that argument. That
Look,
would
I'm
be
not,
epic
let's
stuff.
get didn't Chase Sowell play baseball
He
too?
did play baseball. He was a
So,
pretty
yeah.
highly rated recruit.
Yeah, we got 40 spots, and those guys are on full scholarship, so they don't even need a roster spot. But yeah, I mean, look, I'll say this about high school recruiting is one, you have to dodge the draft, so that's going to take at least one of these guys. It does every year, and then two, they have to make it through the fall, and going from high school baseball to high level Division I baseball is a pretty big adjustment for the majority of these guys. So it's hard for me to get excited about anybody until really the spring, specifically for freshmen. I think JUCO guys are a little bit different. They're built a little bit differently, but we see freshmen kind of they either don't make it here or don't make it through that first fall, because things are intense when you get to Division I.
Yeah, you just never know. And I mean, the year Jacob Jenkins Cowart had a freshman All-American season, he was kind of like completely unknown coming in, and then honestly had just an okay fall. So like he wasn't even mentioned. Then all of a sudden he's out there just having a heck of a freshman year. So you never know, and that's what makes it fun. But hey, we're talking about it, so might as well discuss it. All right. Somebody asked, is Aaron Groller out of eligibility? He is. What do y'all think about how about USF hiring Indiana State's coach? I mean, that's a great hire, Scott. We've talked about, their potential as a program. I think that honestly might be the best hire of any program this offseason thus far.
Yeah, I mean, I was thoroughly impressed. It's a coach that, one, I thought would be destined for a Big Ten job, and two, I thought he would take a job that is of higher quality than USF. And I didn't even expect USF to look in that direction as far as current head coaches. I thought typically in my opinion, USF goes after kind of fallback guys really in all sports of that kind of failed, like a Mark Kingston out of South Carolina who was there before. I thought really that's the way they would go. So great hire by them. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Wes Carroll and Evansville if somebody plucks him away after the year they've had. And great on the American to decimate the Missouri Valley Conference from so maybe they won't be one spot ahead of us as the 11th ranked RPI conference. So when Aaron Fitt is making out his bracket, he can't use that against us anymore.
This is very true. Cameron says, in today's climate of college baseball, do you all really think we can make it to Omaha without utilizing the portal more?
Oral Roberts went to Omaha last year.
So that's a yes.
Can you? Yes. Are you going to be in a great position to do so? No. But
I agree.
It's possible.
I agree with both of them. All right. Somebody said rumors about USF infielder Eric Snow. ECU was trying to recruit him, but he committed to Auburn. SEC money. Anything else y'all want to add going into the offseason before we do our – I tell you what, instead of doing projections for next year, we don't even know what the hell any of this is pointless.
There's no way we can project.
Yeah. Let's do what are fair expectations for next season? I think that's a more relevant discussion. Because, trying to predict a record, we don't even know the team. We know, 3 players. We don't know the schedule. So what are excuse me? What are fair expectations? I'm getting choked up thinking about ECU. We'll start with Wags. What are fair expectations for next year ECU baseball, given the uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big expectation is just that the guys who are coming back take that next step. I think, Dixon Williams is a guy who I think struggled at the start of the year, and I think he played really well at the end. And if he takes that next step, he's a middle of the order bat, and that makes me feel a lot better about the lineup. Same thing for Colby Wallace. I think he has untapped potential on both ends, pitching and hitting. And Walker Barron, I said it before, I think he's a future, star. And Ryan McChrystal, if he comes back, Davin Whitaker, again, he's a guy who was here last year. I talked about it a lot. I think he could be that guy to have that kind of, not out completely out of left field, but maybe the unexpected big leap. So I think the fair expectations are that some of the guys who either didn't have big roles last year or guys that, still need to take that next step to become that guy on this team, I think the fair expectation is that they do it. But I just think it's too early to project, is this team going to host? Is it going to be a 2 seed? As it stands right now, absolutely not. It's not a host. And just to put it bluntly, but again, the offseason started a week ago. And again, there is a pecking order to the whole portal thing. ECU can't go out and have their pick of the crop right now. You got to wait. It's a process. You got to get the right guys, and you got to get some on both ends. But yeah, I think overall, I just think there are going to be guys that take a step that maybe some that people aren't expecting. So I think that's the fair expectation, the way I see it.
Mr. Sunshine and Rainbows, Jonathan Wagner.
I had to flip the script a little bit to end the show.
Chuck, appreciate your honesty.
Thank you, Chuck.
It's good to see you're back, Chuck. And I'm glad we're reading your comments this time. What do you got, Scott? What is a fair expectation for next season?
And maybe it's unfair because we are all victims of our own success. But for Cliff, my expectations for him are every year to win at least 40 games to compete for a championship in this conference in the regular season and the tournament, and to be in the conversation for a host and have a top 25 team. So, I mean, I think those are kind of just baseline expectations. I think our program has the resources. I think our program has the fans, the environment to make that happen every year. And if that doesn't happen, then that's when things need to really start changing. So it's either, use the portal this year, live up to those expectations that I think are, probably his own would be in line with that too, or, do it some other way. But you have to continue to put top 25 teams out on the field if you have what is essentially a lifetime contract. So my expectations are that we continue to succeed at the level that we've grown accustomed to over these last 10 years. And it's because of Cliff Godwin that we've grown accustomed to it, but it's also on him to continue making that happen. So expectations may still be a little lofty for me, but, I think that's what we should expect as ECU baseball fans.
Yeah, I mean, the standard has been set, and year 11, and look, I mean, everything's not going to be the same every year. You're going to have, I think, different challenges each year, especially this day and time. But like, if you don't, to me, you're going to expect to at least compete for a conference championship, if not win one again. I mean, you've won the last 5. I do think teams in the league are getting better, but I would expect ECU to anticipate its primary goal was to win 40 games, win a regular season conference championship, make a regional, hopefully host a regional. So, like, those expectations within the program are going to be there. For me, I would say it's probably going to be a borderline top 25 team on paper just because, like, of how D1 baseball views ECU. I mean, like, if it's not ECU, there's zero chance of them being preseason top 25. With it being ECU, I think they get consideration. I don't know if they'll get enough to be in, but I think they'll be in the mix. And I think they'll be preseason favorite to win the league again, fair or not. And I think the expectation is always at minimum to make a regional. And I think if you make a regional, it's never a bad year because you're putting yourself in position to make it to Omaha. If you don't make a regional, that's when people start getting pissed off, as we saw the 1 year ECU didn't make a regional. under Cliff Godwin, and still almost did because they almost won the conference championship. ECU Pirate Nation says bold prediction. He says we host a Super in Greenville next year. We do get a lot of talk, guys, about the year ECU makes Omaha. It's when it's least expected. Does that mean like going into the season or like going into the postseason? I feel like it's going into the postseason.
Probably a little bit both.
Yeah. So if you're hosting a Super, there's going to be a lot of expectations.
But what if you're hosting the Super against Illinois State?
That would never happen to ECU. It would be like
it would be so heartbreaking when we lose that.
In 2019 to ECU Illinois State to go to Omaha, but
we're gonna get walked off in the game too to lose in heartbreaking fashion.
I don't know what to
don't go down that road again. All right. Johnny Robertson says Cliff is the only coach in the nation to win a regular season title or a conference tournament title in each of the last 6 seasons. Wright State and Army have done it in 6-team leagues with multiple coaches. So good stat there. And yeah, I think a lot of people have expectations of looking at this, a 2 seed or a 3 seed. AAC first place is still the expectation, says Adam McMunn. Somebody says more midweek struggles. So I think most people at minimum would expect to make a regional. I think that's fair. I mean, what about you, Wags? Like, you seem less bullish on this team, but like, do you still expect ECU to be in a regional next year?
Oh yeah, I think ceiling is you're still hosting as a very high-end host, but floor is a 2 seed. And part of that's the conference. And yes, I do think some teams will be better, but the bottom of the conference is still going to be bad. But yeah, I mean, they're still talent. I know that, I might get worked up a little bit sometimes, and I understand there's a lot of holes here, but I also understand there is a lot of talent, and I trust Cliff Godwin. I mean, do I agree with everything Cliff does? No, absolutely not. It'd be crazy if I did. But Cliff has proven that he's good at kind of getting the most out of guys, and maybe the guys that, in my head, aren't the guys that put you in the best position to succeed. So I do think, even if I come into the season thinking, man, this team's really bad, it's probably going to be better than I expected to. So I think floor for me is still a 2 seed.
ECU fans have been very spoiled over the few years. And could you imagine if we were having this conversation in the basketball realm? Let's just say the minimum is we got to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Don't get me started.
One day. Probably not.
The floor is an 11 seed in the Midwest region. All right.
Is to beat the Division III team that we scheduled for some reason.
Season opener versus Erskine or Erskine, whatever the heck it is. Is my bold prediction for basketball. Kaysen Romali says we'll get there. Kaysen, by the way, it'll be his last appearance on the Hoisted Colors show tomorrow as an intern with Hoisted Colors, so it might be emotional. May have a Danny Bill post show, just sitting at the mic taking it in.
Can we get a watch along for the post show?
The post show.
Yeah, we need another hot dog eating contest or something immediately after the show, just so we can watch Kaysen leave the mic.
Bruce Willis, a big fan of Kaysen. All right. When is the MLB draft? That's a good question, JPN. July 14th through July 16th. So we are planning to do a post-MLB draft show at some point. It may not be right after the draft, but at some point in July before football starts, guys, we'll do a post-draft show. A ton of good interaction tonight. This is our kind of season finale. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Wags, Scott, y'all have been great all year. Appreciate y'all. And anything y'all would like to add before we sign off?
Yeah, appreciate everyone listening and commenting. I love doing this podcast. I love baseball season. I love ECU baseball, and you guys make it that much better. So thanks for listening, and thanks for Scott, and thanks for Igo for hosting us. And I'll be back with my rants and my takes next season, and I can't wait for you guys to hear them.
Scott, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just thanks to everybody who joins us every week and interacts with us, comments, and provides some content and questions for us to answer and allows us to keep doing this in a meaningful way. So it's always fun. It kind of sucks that it ends now and not in a couple weeks. But next year's a new year. You never know how it'll turn out. We'll have a full season to get mad about the D1 rankings and umpires and all sorts of things. And hopefully we got a lot more baseball left in us. So go Pirates.
One of these days, gentlemen, we will be doing a Bucks on the Pond podcast live from Omaha.
Bruce Willis says more females. So
That he used to always message me that he loves females on podcasts. So not a surprise.
And hey, I just want to say, hopefully Wags will have better internet next year. I haven't lagged out since like March, so I'm probably gonna lag out right now. But
you do have a big move coming up, so we'll see how that new Wi-Fi.
I do, new apartment. And I will add one more thing. You know, at some point this summer, one of my friends and I have talked about just starting up a podcast to talk about ECU baseball, college football, random stuff. So be on the lookout for that, and follow me on Twitter. We'll tweet it out. Don't know when that's going to happen, but that's a goal for the summer.
You know, in your contract you signed, you're not allowed to do another podcast, right? You realize that?
Don't compete.
Yeah. JPN 1212 says my wife thinks I like this podcast more than her. No, she doesn't think. She knows.
I was going to say, do you?
I think we appreciate you, JPN. Skull Pirate says, is there a football counterpart to the podcast? I mean, not officially. We do some off-season stuff, football and basketball on the podcast, but we do football talk every day on the radio show. So just not with Scott and Wags.
You have the Nova Pirate appearances.
Yeah, that is true.
You do those like early, like on Mondays. They're always on like noon.
Yeah, Nova's got an interesting schedule, so we get a little less interaction with those at like 1 o'clock on a Monday, but it's still good. All right, we got to get out of here. We appreciate everybody sincerely all season long. Thank y'all once again. We'll be back in July. We'll see y'all then. Until then, for Scott, for Wags, I'm Stephen Igo. We'll be out all summer and be back sometime in July as I continue to read comments and it messes me up. All right.
Golf course.
Yep.
I'll be out there.
He'll be getting stung by Yellow Jackets. Wags will be repairing his shoulders along with Riley Johnson. We'll see you guys. It's been real.